Thank you very much, and thank you all of you for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you this afternoon. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Actian, about the trends that we see in the market, and the direction we're taking the company in. Before I get started, I would like to thank our partners, Nishuri-san and Alan Miner from AG Tech and Insight. They've been very good partners for a very long time, and they're the reason why Actian is here in Japan, and they're an extension of Actian in Japan. We live in very interesting times. We've got robotic cars, we've got self-driving cars, we've got advances in pharmaceuticals and medical technology, where you can replace any part of your body. We've got new advances in fraud detection. We've got new advances in insurance, hyper-personalization, internet banking. Of all of these, there's one common thread that permeates them all. And that common thread is the fact that every one of these new technologies, every one of these new advances, depends on large-scale management and analytics of significant volumes of data in very, very high-performance fashions. This should be actually good news to many of the people here who are data practitioners, because it now begins to put the data practitioners at the heart of most of these businesses. And it is at the heart of lots of changes in what enterprises need. At the bottom of that circle, data analytics and data discovery by data scientists and analysts is not new. That has been here for a long time. What is new is that there are more and more people now involved with data. And data now begins to be the center of the operations of companies. If you think about it, data management is at the center of everything that goes on in banking or in telecommunications or in retail, where they're trying to understand who you are before you actually enter the store, or as soon as you enter the store. The changes here are the volumes of this data and its different forms that we call hybrid data are increasing dramatically. It's not news to you. The bigger news here is that in order for the companies to use this data effectively, all of this needs to be connected to operational systems. It needs to be connected to provide you real-time integration. For example, in a self-driving car, it's no use to find out that there was a pedestrian going across the street 2 hours later. It doesn't make any sense for me to detect fraud that happened yesterday. Many of these require now this integration of this data that a company has got access to, into real-time operational systems. And it needs a level of reliability and scalability that they've never had before. Finally, if you look around that circle, the number of people touching this data, it's no longer the little guy down in the basement, the data scientist working on the data. It is a lot more people touching this. Now, what interesting things happen when you have the volume of data going up, when you have it inserted into real-time performance environments, and when you have many concurrent users using this information at the same time. Well, what happens? Number one, performance and reliability have always been needed. But now performance and reliability under these high volume, high concurrency requirements really begin to stress the data management business, the data management fabric within an enterprise. Yes, you've got Oracle and Teradata and Exadata and Netezza and all the rest of these systems. But if you have to scale those systems to deal with this volume and this concurrency and this operational requirement, your company is going to go bankrupt. It's far too expensive. So those high costs of existing databases are no longer sustainable in this new environment. There's too much of it. One has to rely on commodity hardware. One has to rely on commodity hardware on-premise, in the company, and in the cloud. The cloud computing, is nothing more than commodity hardware being made available to lots of people. And the big users of data, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Zynga, Twitter, Uber, they're not relying on proprietary databases. Every one of those is using commodity hardware. Every single one. This new approach, this hybrid approach is important and necessary. And why is it hybrid? Think about a company, pick one. Toyota, Sumitomo Bank, Toshiba, NTT Docomo. It's going to be a long time before everything moves to the cloud. They may use the cloud in some cases, but most often there's going to be data on-premise. So a hybrid approach, something that allows them to use both on-premise and in the cloud, is going to be needed for a long time to come. And the last notion here is multi-cloud. It is a different notion to have something put up in AWS. You wouldn't want it all there. You would want to make sure that you can be in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, your own virtual private cloud, and your on-premise situation. So you want to be in multi-cloud environments so that you avoid cloud lock-in. Remember how much the lock-in to one big proprietary database has cost your company? Most companies? Oh, I've got all my data in Oracle. I can't move it out because it's all there. Well, if you move all that data to a single cloud vendor, not only are you locked into that cloud vendor, you don't even own your data. So this notion of making sure that you are multi-cloud or cloud independent is very, very important. The next issue is companies will have to rethink integration completely to be much more flexible and adaptable. And why is that? Applications will continue to change. You've already seen them change today. You've got more microservices, you've got more SaaS applications, and the rate of change of these applications is increasing. You'll see your CRM systems move to Salesforce or something like it. You're using Workday. There may be others. This is going to continue to be an issue. External sources of data are going to be very important. You know, at one point, all the data that an application needed used to be connected to the application underneath. You had Oracle supply chain and an Oracle database underneath it, one-to-one. But if you think of supply chain applications today, some of the data that supply chain application uses is not just contained within the application. Very often it's not contained within the enterprise. I'm looking at traffic data, weather data, shipping data, things that are outside the enterprise completely to run a supply chain really effectively. Those external sources of data will continue to proliferate. You have an easy example. When you look at your navigation systems, how much of that data is contained within your reach? It's not. You're relying on data that's coming out from third parties. Edge devices, and we'll talk about that some more in a minute, will continue to proliferate. The IoT arena has pushed computing out to the edge, and that will continue to happen. And we'll need to continue to integrate this data from the edge. We'll continue to need to get feedback from those, whether it's feedback from maintenance systems, whether it's feedback from devices in hospitals, whether it's feedback from medical devices that are put outside on the edge or at individuals' homes. Much more information coming from those. And finally, the destinations of this data will change. Remember, we talked about hybrid, sometimes on-premise, sometimes in the cloud. Well, where I move this data is going to begin to change. And in many cases, I may not even move the data. I may move compute to the data. So thinking about this flexibly with integration is going to be a big deal. The edge. I don't want you to think about the edge as just in manufacturing. It's not. The edge is any place where you've moved computing out to and gathering information from that is outside the main system. So for example, if I'm a pharmaceutical company and I've put one of my machines in a clinic, that's the edge. I'm getting information from that clinic. If I'm a retail company and I've put a kiosk into one corner of one store, that is the edge. If I'm Disneyland and I've got a kiosk at a park where users are interacting with, that is the edge. So it does not need to be an IoT device inside my car in the engine compartment. That is the edge too, but it doesn't need to be that way. It can be any device outside that is collecting information that is being provided into an enterprise. And the growing aspect of mobile phones, mobile computing, people taking the maintenance guys, taking their tablets out to a construction site. That is the edge as well. There's a growing amount of these which will be generating a lot of information. There's an increasing need to make sure these are connected, and there's an increasing need to make sure that processing takes place at the edge. Now, why is this important? If all the devices at the edge were sending all the information in, it becomes overwhelming in the center. So what we've got to do is ensure that you have a database at the edge that is processing some of this information and only sending back up the information that you most need. Okay? That is the big change in most of this edge computing. What this means is I don't need a big computer at the edge. I need a small IoT device at the edge, but I need a capable database at the edge. I need a database that is reliable, that is secure, that is connected, and interestingly, that needs to work regardless of the operating system. Because when I spread my stuff out over the enterprise, it is extremely unlikely that all of them will be on the same OS. So now I need to make sure that I can collect this data from across the systems without having to do ETL between them. Because if I have to do ETL among 20,000 devices, this is going to be a problem. So I need zero footprint or near zero footprint, small database, reliable, at the edge, which does not need a database, DBA, which works across OS, which works both in a connected and disconnected mode. Now, many people have been using flat files for this. You can tell why that doesn't work. And if you want a detailed explanation of why flat files don't work in this, please come and see us after this discussion. We'll be happy to explain in some detail. So what does Actian do? We do three things. One, we deliver breakthrough analytic performance on commodity hardware. On-premise or in the cloud, it doesn't matter. Multi-cloud platforms. Number two, we revolutionize how your data is collected. It can be from any device, from anywhere, in real time, near real time, streaming, doesn't matter. And number three, we help you harness data at the edge and through mobile devices across the company. So, edge, integration, analytics. That's what Actian does. We're not a startup. We've been around for a while. As many of you know, it takes about 10 years for a database to mature. So we're not, we've been in this business a while. We know data management and analytics very well. We have about 53 patents in this area that range from positional delta trees, which help you harness Hadoop and the Hadoop ecosystem really rapidly, make Hadoop an operational data warehouse, to columnar analytics and everything in between. We're global. We're in 15 offices. We're in about 15 countries. We provide 24/7 support. And we typically work with large Fortune 500 enterprises, people like Sabre and FedEx and governments around the world, Lufthansa, Ericsson, eBay, Xerox, and so on. Again, around managing the data, connecting the data, and analyzing the data. We've got lots of references here in Japan as well. Why are we here in Japan? Why is this Actian company coming to Japan at this point? You know, lots of people have said Japan is slow to adopt new technology. I disagree. If you look back in time, Japan has led the world in technology, particularly operational technology advances. Where was the first bullet train? Where was the first Shinkansen? Here. Where was the first commercial electric vehicle? Here, Toyota Prius. Where were the first advances in videography, in compact disc technology, in music, in telephony? Here. Where were the first operational systems put into manufacturing? Here. The Toyota production system is legendary. The operational systems that they've put on have been legendary. This change we're talking about is very significant. This change of harnessing data to really take performance up to a different level across banks, insurance companies, manufacturing companies, railways, telecommunication companies, and so on is here to stay. This change is significant. It's my belief that in Japan, this technology, this operational technology, will be brought to life and will end up being featured a lot higher than most people believe. People over here understand technology, they understand how to leverage it, and they're very innovative around that. In fact, If I'm not wrong, Japan has the second largest number of patents in the world, and they exceed everybody in the number of patents per head. So there is a very strong belief that there is going to be change, and change coming here into the Japanese industry in a very, very big way. That said, there are some changes needed in terms of learning. There are some changes. There are lots of people who have a very firm view of how things were done in the company and how things were done and with which companies and with what. Changing that view will be important. And changing that view and moving that will be up to people like you, people in this room. So I'd like to conclude with just one thing. And that is a quote from Alvin Toffler. For those of you who don't know Alvin Toffler, he died in 2016. Alvin Toffler was a famous writer and futurist and a commentator on technology. He wrote books like Future Shock and The Third Wave, and it was actually far ahead of his time. His quote went like this: "The illiterate of the 21st century are not going to be those who can't read and write. The illiterate of the 21st century are going to be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." I think that is very good advice for us in this era of technology change. Thank you very much.